Joining me now is our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Levarco, along with another Middle East expert, Shahram Hadian. Guys, welcome to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good to be Great to be with you both.
We have big news, so much news. We'll try to get to all of it. You today during radio, Aaron, text me something so fascinating. Here it is, Amit Segal. Tell us who this guy is. He's a Jewish reporter, I think, for one of your TV stations there, and I did a little research on him. Apparently, he's kind of close to Netanyahu as well, right?
He is a superb journalist, correspondent. He's on most of the major channels on television. He doesn't really take a left or right-wing side, but he is a really a close ally of Prime Minister Netanyahu, very reputable young man.
Wow. Well, he put out something, and you sent it to me today, very interesting, and that is that this Board of Peace, look at this, the Board of Peace doesn't mention Gaza, and Logan, can we bring it up? Doesn't mention Gaza, Palestinians, or reconstruction at all. Instead, the charter focuses on member states, leaders, and voting procedures. According to the document, each country gets a 3-year free trial, but $1 billion buys you a permanent seat at the table. And who holds the power to interrupt the charter, or excuse me, to interpret the charter, dissolve the board, and appoint its successor? The chairman, of course, Donald J. Trump. So, yes, it looks like a lot like a reconstruction plan for Gaza, and a lot less like a reconstruction plan for Gaza, I should say, and a lot more like a demolition of the United Nations. Now, this is very interesting because he goes on to write that the invite list hints at a much broader scope. After all, the only other place you'd find leaders from Russia, Argentina, Belarus, Canada, Australia, Egypt, Hungary, Pakistan, Jordan, Turkey, Israel, and India all sitting at the same table is at the UN General Assembly. Now, I did not know this until today. Trump's grudge against the UN is long-standing. Well, so is mine, but it's because I don't like globalism, Islam, and communism and Marxism, which are dominated by the UN, and I don't like world government. But his, reportedly dating back to the early 2000s, when he lost the bid to renovate the UN headquarters. In office the first time, he pulled the U.S. out of the UN Human Rights Council, and just last week, he issued an executive order withdrawing from 35 non-UN organizations and 31 UN entities that, in his own words, quote, operate contrary to U.S. national interest, security, economic prosperity, or sovereignty, end quote. Now, I don't think that reporter, who seems to be very credible, would be putting this out if he thought that was just some kind of old rumor mill report. So President Trump, I did not know, had wanted to renovate the UN back in 2000, and his company was, lost the bid. I didn't know that. If that is true, this would be absolutely in keeping with Donald Trump, that if you slight me, I'm going to destroy you. I mean, he's on video talking over and over. When someone comes against you, you go out and you take advantage of any opportunity to destroy them, right? Hey, you know what? I don't care what his motives are. If he wants to go on and do away with the UN, I'll be applauding him all the way. I'm so against the United Nations, as my 36-year career shows. Now, I don't think Donald Trump is the Antichrist. He is not the Antichrist. But when you start talking about putting together a board, I'm just waiting for there to be 10 horns, which are 10 leaders who have not yet received the kingdom as of yet, but for 1 hour, when they do, at the time John was writing, they hadn't received the kingdom, but they will, and they're going to eventually give their power and authority to the Antichrist. I don't know if this is the board being made up, if we're going to be end up with 10 central bankers that are running 10 central, European Union, North American Union. I don't know how it's going to work out. I know the UN has a plan for dividing the world into 10 regions. The Club of Rome has a plan for dividing the world into 10 regions. The European Union Commission has a plan for years for dividing the world into 10 regions. I don't know how it's going to go down, but the Bible says there are going to be 10 world leaders that are working with Antichrist. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I don't think he is. But I do believe he is breaking up the old order and building a new order that the Antichrist could very easily come in and take full advantage of all of the chaos to put it together into his own, and maybe differently, but there must be In other words, the old build back better. There must be a destruction of the old system to bring in the new system. And I think that's what's going on, which is why I think Lupnick, the Commerce Secretary, is at the World Economic Forum, mocking them to their face on their own platform today and saying that the new order is over. This was kind of confusing this morning to me, but it's all now coming into clear focus today. What are your response first, Aaron?
Well, it reminds me of someone that you have on your show, Brandon, Erwin Lutzer.
Yeah.
When he wrote his book Hitler's Cross, and he mentions that the stage was already set for Adolf Hitler to come in and just sit in power. And I think that's what you're saying, and I think that that's what is happening. And it could be a future president of the United States. It could be someone from Europe. It could be someone like Mandami from New York, the mayor of New York, someone being groomed. But definitely the stage is being set. 58 nations have been invited to sit on this technocratic committee. By the way, Benjamin Netanyahu, or let's say Israel, we don't want to sit on it. We're not interested at the moment and I think there's a potential showdown. Maybe that's a bit stronger word. There's some, unless something is happening between Bibi and Trump behind the scenes, we could be heading for a bit of a tension between the two, because it seems that Trump is adamant that Turkey and Qatar sit on that committee, and Bibi has said absolutely no way will they sit on that committee. Turkey are our main threat at the moment. And here's one of the problems, Brandon and Shahram. If you're not aware that if Turkey are allowed to sit in the south of Israel, inside of Gaza, they're also going to be sitting in the north, because what we're seeing in Syria right now with Jolani and the new Syrian regime, and what they are doing to the Kurds, not only what they're doing to the Kurds, I remember I reported on this 2 years ago that the Kurds had thousands of ISIS prisoners inside of their prison, and those ISIS prisoners have now been let loose. And it's all being sponsored by Turkey. So Turkey are in control of the north. Believe me, they're in control of Syria. They know what's going on. They've got interests there. Israel cannot afford to have Turkey in the north, Turkey in the south. They are a very powerful army. And by the look of it, if and when the Iranian regime crumble, and it looks like it's heading any moment, we're on our edge here, but if and when the Iranian regime crumble, that means that the Shiites will no longer be the big superpower in the Muslim world. Then Turkey, they will step up, and they will be the leaders of the Sunni Muslim world, which is the majority. They will become a very powerful force, which is what they've been calling for. Every day they're calling for the liberation of Jerusalem, of Israel. They are the people that Donald Trump is inviting into Gaza. Unless he's got some kind of strategy, it's not logical. He knows. He's not naive. He knows the danger. So there's got to be some kind of rationale behind it. I'm not too sure what it is.
Wow. Well, with that said, I want to play what I did on radio today, because I think it helps us to understand what's going on here. There seems to be a agreed upon message, and that is that the UN is over. It doesn't, Trump's done with it. He's tired of it. It's not doing the things that he wants it to do. In fact, today we even had a tweet that got put out, if I can find it again real quick, a tweet that President Trump put back out on Truth Social. And it was a gentleman that was complaining about the United Nations. And President Trump turned around and put it back out on Truth Social. And here it is right here. The man said, Bobby D, at what point are we going to realize the enemy is within? China and Russia are the boogeymen when the real threat is the UN, NATO, and this, quote, religion, end quote. I put religion in quotes because it's not a religion, it's a cult. Yeah, I went there. President Trump put that out on Truth Social. Now, I don't believe Russia and China are boogeymen. I think they have the real agenda. There's a power struggle going on. But interesting that Donald Trump now has gone from China to the threat is the UN and NATO. And maybe the reason he's poking all these countries in the eye right now is to see who's on our side, who's not on our side. And he's showing everybody, these people are not for us. They rape us financially. They don't care about us. So we're done with them and we're going to build our own team. And it kind of fits with what his Commerce Secretary Lupnick was saying at the World Economic Forum. Now, listen, at one point he says WEF. That's obviously World Economic Forum. He's mocking them on their own stage with their logo right behind him. This is very interesting.
Well, I think you should start at a much higher level. Okay. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind.
And can I just stop right there? He's 100% right. This is the gigantic sucking sound of jobs coming out of the U.S., leaving the U.S., as he's talking, that was warned about by none other than Ross Perot and NAFTA. George W. Bush, George H. Bush, all these NAFTA people. All these folks that were talking like this and then wanting to bring in all this other cheap labor with immigration or voters for the Democrat Party. I've been very frustrated with Donald Trump the last few weeks over Iran and other issues and Qatar and whatnot. But I got to say, if this is really what he's doing, is destroying the New World Order and their club, which I don't think they ever wanted him in. He reminds me an awful lot of JFK. JFK's family was looked down on by the elite. They didn't want him in the club and his dad, Joe, in the club, apparently. But if Donald Trump, I said I'm going to praise him when I agree with him and I'm going to disagree when I disagree. But if he's destroying the New World Order as we know it in globalism that has been, shall we say, bankrupting, financially raping America for years and then bringing the worst of the worst into our country to take our jobs and to create crime, then I'm all for what he's doing. Now, I don't think he obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to the eschatological impact. I think he's laying the foundation for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. But if his motives are as being described by Lupnick, how can I argue with that? I can only applaud it. I want these guys to, I didn't think they were going to get their, just reward until Judgment Day. But apparently Donald Trump might be destroying these guys and their plans, and that by 2030 you'll own nothing and be happy and all this other garbage. So I don't know. I have to reserve full understanding and the story playing out. But right now I'm pretty well intrigued because I hate these globalists. Sharam?
I agreed there 100%. We understand that globalism is ultimately the beast system that the Bible talks about. So as Christians, we should hate the system because it's any system that is against national sovereignty, the borders and boundaries that God has ordained for nations. We should be against. And I'm shocked how many Christians are for globalism and the global order, and they quote the UN. So as you played that clip of Lupnick, what he's saying is absolutely right. Where we got to move away from that, go back to national sovereignty, go back to being in control of our own resources, our own people, our own assets. It's just in my brain, I'm having a hard time wrapping that along with what Aaron just mentioned, which is if this board of peace is going to have 58 nations, are they creating a parallel UN where Trump is in charge? He's the chairman of the board. He's setting up the seal. Again, and by the way, let's not forget, this is coming off of the signature back in October 13th in Sharm el-Sheikh when they signed the document. Who was at that table? It was Egypt. It was Qatar. It was Erdogan of Turkey. So those are the nations that he signed the agreement with. So my question to Aaron would be, what is Israel going to do? What is going to be, I actually think, Aaron, your word showdown is a good word, because I kind of see that coming to a showdown right now, is that, and this of course goes totally against all the narrative that, Israel controls U.S. foreign policy, Israel controls America with their AIPAC lobby. No, it's the Muslims that are controlling American policy. If it is globalism, or if it's another version, then it's looking like an Islamic alliance. And Russia, like you said, Brandon, is not child's play. Russia is mentioned in Bible prophecy as coming against Israel. So is Turkey. And to Aaron's point, I'm so glad Aaron pointed this out. For the last 8 to 10 years, I've been trying to tell people the Sunni power has shifted from Saudi Arabia to Turkey, and to some extent Qatar, because of their money, only because of their money. But Turkey is the key player in the Sunni power now. And that's why what's happening in Syria, now with the massacre of the Kurds, is such a betrayal to an ally. The Kurds have been an ally in the fight against the Islamic takeover of the Middle East and in the fight to try to protect Israel. So what is going to happen, what they're saying in the interview, Brandon, I agree with, but the Board of Peace, that is very interesting, because it sure looks like it's setting up this false peace system.
Well, here is President Trump. He was asked today at the White House, are you setting up something as an alternative to the UN? Here's his response.
Okay.
Do you want your Board of Peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue, because the potential is so great.
Wow. Okay. So it kind of said both. Yeah, it might replace the UN, but yet the UN's got to continue. So he just hedged his bets both ways. Before I get a response from Aaron, I do want to go back to that rest of that clip by Lupnick and at the World Economic Forum today.
We are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
Wow. So there you go. I mean, there's so much coming out of that conference today related to the New World Order, and there is real fight because even their leader, Fink, is saying today, and I'll play it, we've lost trust. People don't trust us anymore. We've lost trust. Donald Trump is now taking advantage of their weakness to go in and get rid of them there and set up a new system. And Aaron, Lupnick's saying, why would you go into a relationship with people that are not smart, number one, and that are going to make you dependent on them, take away your sovereignty as a people or a business or a country? Why would you do this, WEF, World Economic Forum? Stupid. Telling me they're stupid to their faces right there, right? And yet we read today that the U.S. is building a nuclear power plant in Israel. It'll be your first nuclear power plant because you don't have enough natural gas to run the whole AI system that's being built, which will include apparently turning Gaza into a smart city, kind of a model for the world. I think, hey, if you can bring peace to this region and digital ID and digital tracking and biometrics and keep the crazy people out and control people's behavior and make them behave themselves and be on their good behavior. If you can do that in the Gaza Strip, we can do that anywhere in the world, right? I mean, it seems like it's the model, Aaron.
Well, I wonder if, I think one of Shahham's statements was quite insightful when he talked about it's not AIPAC that are running in the US, it's the Muslim economic push. And that was a really good insight. And I bring that up because I wonder if Donald Trump is not building that nuclear plant, not only to help Israel, but there's another alliance being set up, and that's a Muslim alliance with the Saudis, Turkey, Qatar, and Pakistan. And with Pakistan being nuclear empowered, what is going on? Is this a counter to what Donald Trump is doing with his new, let's say, United Nations? I don't know. I'm just saying that in our conversation here. He seems to be wanting to form some kind of alliance. He's invited 58 nations. And what you also said, Brennan, about the weak and the strong. He apparently, the Great Britain are, they're selling, I forgot the name of the country, they're giving it away. Do you remember the name of the country?
Are you talking about Greenland?
No, not Greenland. Something Garcia.
Oh, the Garcia, Diego Garcia Islands?
Yeah, they're giving it. They're giving it away. And Donald Trump, he called out Sturmer, the prime minister, by calling him a weak leader. And
he called him stupid.
Well, that as well, obviously. But this, like you said, maybe he's inviting them to find out who's on his side, who's weak, who's strong. Maybe this is part of his tactics. But all these alliances, it's just so much happening. We haven't even talked about India and Trump's plan to unite the West and the East economically, and to build that corridor bypassing China, bypassing Turkey, a massive plan right through Israel. And India will be a key player in that from the East. So much happening.
Yes, it is. And it really shows you how much can happen that a lot of people have mocked us for, Sharon, when it comes to Bible prophecy. And I have for years stuck to my guns. Babylon means Babylon, 58 miles south of Baghdad, that region of Babylonian Empire. And it will come back to life, and it will be as described in Revelation 17 and 18. And yet, what do we see there now? The fall port, and they just finished their underground water tunnel. And it is said to be, if not the biggest commercial site in the world. So much is indeed happening. But the World Economic Forum, who would have thought in 2021, 2022, that the World Economic Forum, which seemed to have a boot on all of our throats with the pandemic and the plandemic, and that by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy, and social credit scores and carbon footprint scores. It's like these guys are actually taking over. Well, now, here we are today, being this evening, January 20th, 2026, which is ironic. Trump was sworn in a year ago today. Now, here we've been kind of frustrated with him, as I said, in certain areas. But wait a minute, all of a sudden now I'm seeing another side that goes, wait a minute. I can get pretty excited, as I said, about destroying these guys. But let's make sure we don't make the system that's coming in worse than the one we already got. Let's make sure we don't end up having the Muslims in charge. And, you know, again, a system that we're just going to hate just as much. But there's clearly a power shift going on. And Trump is taking advantage of their stupidity, as already been mentioned. Keir Starmer, Mark Carney, these guys, but also their unpopularity. And they even know it. Here is BlackRock's Fink, I guess, who's now chairman of the World Economic Forum, admitting today that he knows they're not popular.
We believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. For many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust.
All right, so they've admitted that most people in the world hate them. They're a bunch of elitists. They're a bunch of globalists, which means socialism on a global scale, really. Communitarianism, by their own definition, public-private partnerships, big government, big business. Now, question is, are we going to get something that's just as bad and maybe even worse? Here's another clip. This is Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, who, of course, is a globalist. And I asked this week, will the people running these countries increasingly formally be bankers? I always thought the bankers would be controlling the politicians. And that's what Carol Quigley writes about in his 1966 book, Tragedy and Hope. And the Bank for International Settlements at the apex of the global order, he says. That's the central bank of central bankers out of Basel, Switzerland. And they have regular meetings called their regular global meetings. And it'll come to me, the acronym they use. But they have these regular meetings where they get together as a bunch of central bankers. Our Federal Reserve goes. Other central banks of the world goes. And they have their regular meetings there to decide global policy. And he said at the Bank for International Settlements, that would be the apex for the new order. So I always thought that the 10 leaders described in Revelation and in Daniel would probably be 10 politicians run by the bankers. Mm-hmm. But it looks like increasingly the bankers are becoming the leaders. Mm-hmm. Here, listen to this.
President Trump and a lot of people who agree with him condemn globalism a lot. And I suspect, you would be the kind of epitome of a globalist. You worked for Goldman Sachs, I believe. You were a central banker. You're comfortable and lived in several countries. Is globalism, first of all, is it a thing? And is it over?
I think, look, understanding how the world works, having an appreciation for other cultures, understanding the connections, and being able to, or at least appreciating ways that how we connect, whether it's through technology, trade.
Okay, he doesn't know what to say to that. So you're the epitome of the globalist, Mr. Carney.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if you can cough up $1 billion to be a permanent member, if maybe at the end of the day, it's not going to be bankers. It's not even going to be leaders of nations. How do you know it won't end up being a very, very powerful billionaire who goes to represent his country? He puts up the $1 billion and he goes to represent his region of the world or country.
Yeah.
Sharam?
Well, that's, again, just reading the charter of the Board of Peace, that's kind of the way it's written. It doesn't have to be an actual elected leader or representative leader. It's somebody who's a representative of that nation that can be picked to be on that board by their nation. That's the way that I'm reading the charter. So we know that there's a merger between central bank digital currency, the CBDC, and obviously the global governance. But to your point, can that merger be where they will become the government or some representative will become the government? And like with Carney, I mean, what a ridiculous statement about, we want to be, kind of the diversity, inclusive kind of messaging, other populations and other cultures. And what does that mean? You're being invaded by these Islamic nations and the red-green axis. It goes back to the foundational, Brandon, of that red-green axis controlling things. Prophetically, it's so interesting because as the Bible has said that the nations that line up, the nations that are part of coming against Israel and America potentially turning on Israel. And I mean, we forget that so much of Bible prophecy is Middle East centric, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So much of Bible prophecy is you said Babylon. Babylon is Babylon. Where is Babylon? I mean, that's modern day Middle East, Iraq, that region, Iraq, where is Persia? Where is Turkey? So where is the throne of Satan that was talked about in the book of Revelation? That was in Pergamus, which is in Turkey. Where was Daniel when he was getting the prophecy about the coming?
He was in Babylon.
He was in Babylon, right? So yeah, we need to shift it. But so now we see Trump maybe directly welcoming these Islamic nations into this new aspect, because he didn't, when he interviewed, you played the clip, that was not a hard no. Is this going to take the place of the UN? Well, it could, right? It was not a hard, no. We're not going to, we value the authority of the UN. No, he was like, the UN is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It has potential, but so he did not give it a hard no. So I think that that's exactly what they're planning. This is going to be a substitute, a parallel system. But in this case, they haven't gotten rid of the Muslim countries that are already controlling the UN. They just invited them directly to the table. And this is, I don't know, Aaron could comment further. I don't think this is good news for Israel. Obviously, it leads to the deception that we know is coming in Daniel 9.
Well, particularly if the peace board is stacked with a bunch of Muslim nations.
Right.
And by the way, how do we know the Vatican doesn't say, here's a check for $1 billion, we can afford that?
Yes.
And you have the Pope,
why not?
And you have the Pope sitting on the board. They can stroke a check for $1 billion and not even miss it.
Yeah, I mean, Vatican City is a sovereign nation, right? I mean, Vatican City is a sovereign jurisdiction, by the way, which is theocratic, right?
Yep.
It's under theocratic rule. So I agree with you. Why wouldn't the Vatican be there under the guise of, hey, we're building the Abrahamic faith, where this is part of the Abraham Accords, this is part of our peace plan? Remember the billboard in Tel Aviv earlier this year, Aaron, that talked about, beyond the Abraham Accords now? They're going, sort of 2.0. So yes. Could this be part of 2.0?
And
where
let
they're
me
going
say,
beyond?
Yeah, and by the way, Trump said today, he's asked, what does God think of the job he's doing? You ready? Here we go.
First of all, last year you told me that you believe that the reason you won an election is because God put you in this place so that you could save the world. Looking back 1 year, do you feel like God is proud of the effort that you've put in?
I do, actually. I think God is very proud of the job I've done. And that includes for religion. You know, we're protecting a lot of people that are being killed, Christians and Jewish people, and lots of people are being protected by me that wouldn't be protected by another type of president.
Well, and I must say, he also did just put out a great tweet the other day, President Trump did, about protecting churches, and that what happened in Minneapolis was a disgrace, and that those people are professionals, and they need to be rounded up, and they need to be prosecuted. He put that out. And I appreciate a lot of what President Trump has done. Here is the just watched footage of the church raid in Minnesota by the agitators and insurrectionists. These people are professionals. No person acts the way they act. They are highly trained to scream, rant, and rave like lunatics in a certain manner, just like they're doing. They are troublemakers who should be thrown in jail or thrown out of the country. The first to go should be Walz and fake sleazebag Elon Omar, who is supposedly worth over $30 million, even though she's never had anything but a government job. Investigate these corrupt politicians and do it now. And now I'm reading there may actually be indictments coming down on the governor, on the attorney general, and a bunch of them in Minnesota. So, you know, there is so much that President Trump has done that a lot of us have sat here, particularly those of us, you know, have spent our lives studying this, writing about these things, realizing the things we realize that our neighbors and families don't realize. You know, most of them, ignorance is bliss. So they have no idea how corrupt the system is. They don't know what we've been saying for years, that many of these people are under control because they've been involved in things they shouldn't have been doing, either financially or morally. We know how corrupt the Federal Reserve is. Most Americans until the last few years didn't even know squat about the Federal Reserve. So many of us have sat here so frustrated, waiting for someone to take a sledgehammer to a lot of these systems. And God bless Donald Trump for doing it. But yeah, I think God raises up leaders, and I think God, I don't know, we can say God's pleased with Donald Trump's what he's doing, but I can say that God has allowed Donald Trump to become president, if even to destroy this old system and to prepare the way for the system to come that he will allow to rise, so he can set them all up, reveal them for what they are, and then judge them as he's going to do. Aaron?
Well, this week's portion that we read is all about the showdown between Moses and Pharaoh. And Pharaoh kept on hardening his heart. You know, it reminds me of Iran at the moment. They're getting warning after warning after warning. So are Hamas, and they're not backing down. Hamas are not demilitarizing. You know, the USS is a Gerald Ford. It's on its way. It could be judgment, but you know, I've heard people like Jonathan Kahn. I'm not a huge fan, but he brought out an interesting thought that the prince of Persia that's mentioned in the book of Daniel that Shaham quoted, remember when Daniel went to pray and the Lord said, from the moment that you set your heart to pray, the prince of Persia has resisted you, but I've sent my angel Michael, and he brings out his thought about it, that it seems that for centuries, this prince of Persia has been kept quiet. But in 1979, at the rise of the Ayatollah Khomeini and radical Islam, it's almost like he's been set free, set loose. And what we're seeing from that region, Persia, Iran, you know, if America comes and strikes at Iran, are they going to cripple them? Are they going to do little damage? Is this going to be the end of not only the regime, but that principality? And is the focus going to be on Turkey, Russia, China, and others? Or are Iran going to stay around? But, you know, when we're listening to Donald Trump talk about God, you know, I wonder what the Muslim nations think when they look at what's happened since October the 7th. I mean, we are winning this war. What we have accomplished is we're going to look back one day and we're going to say, unbelievable, when you think how we looked on October the 7th and the 8th and where we are today. What are the Muslim nations saying? Because that's what the Lord said to Moses. all the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. Not just Pharaoh, when it took a crumbling of his empire to show that he is the Lord, not all the other gods that they worship. What are the Muslim nations thinking? Are they still believing that their God is going to turn things around? Or are they looking at the Judeo-Christian God, the God that Donald Trump talks about, and are they maybe saying, there's something in this? Obviously, they're winning. I don't know. Maybe Shahram has some
closing
insight.
thoughts from you, Shahram, on this as we wrap?
Well, that's a good question. Some may be, although I think that these Islamic nations are committed to obviously what their text tells them, which is in the end, they believe that they will be successful, which we know, praise God, they will not. I would add one quick thing, and I brought this up when we were on with Dr. Woods last week. What's going on in Iran right now, I do think the president was raised by God or allowed by God to be able to protect the Christians. I do believe that. One of the things that he needs to do. However, again, in my mind, there's a little bit of a double-minded thing going on because, again, look at Syria, look at Pakistan, look at yes, they've said some things and done some things slightly about what's going on in Nigeria or Sudan or Africa regarding the persecution and killing of Christians. And then, of course, look at Iran, right? 1 to 5 million Christians are in Iran today. And yet, will America act on Iran? I would say Persia. Aaron brought up Persia prophetically. If we look at a map of when Ezekiel is getting that prophecy, at the time of Ezekiel, remember, Persia is raised up to come against the Babylonians and then take the Israelites back to Persia and back to Jerusalem to rebuild the city walls and the temple. Persia at that time included all of Turkey, parts of Western Europe, parts of Egypt, Pakistan, Afghanistan, parts of India. So it's not just the boundary that is there today, Persia, Iran. It's what Ezekiel was seeing, in my opinion. And so I think that I think you can have potentially things break through in Iran. There could be a liberation, but yet the spirit of Persia that Aaron's talking about, that demonic presence, is still alive. I don't think it'll be defeated until the Lord defeats the Antichrist, because that's part of the demonic entity that is over the region. And the Prince of Persia, again, when Daniel was getting that prophecy, that demonic spirit was over a much broader piece of land than just modern day Iran.
Wow. TILministry.com, TILministry.com, and Aaron is Light to the Nations Ministry.com. Again, we're helping Israel build a nuclear power plant. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it, Aaron?
Yeah.
I'm a little speechless. I really, where is this going? What's behind it? Is it to counter? Is it to strengthen? That man, Donald Trump, he is an enigma. He may be God's chosen man, and I agree. I think he is. But he is quite a man.
Well, Nebuchadnezzar was God's chosen man for that hour, right?
Yeah.
Meaning that God, and that's what the book of Daniel is all about that we're studying on Sunday night. He raises up leaders and takes them down as he wishes. And that was the whole issue. King, you think you're going to get so arrogant? Why don't you go out there and eat grass for about 7 years? God raises up leaders and does with them as he wills to accomplish his ultimate purpose. So one way or the other, Donald Trump is God's man of the hour right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a bit concerned what's down the line, whether it's the next U.S. president or the one after, because with America basically being in charge of Gaza and what they're planning, that may look good for now. That may be secure for now. But when you've looked at the history with people like Obama and Biden, and then talk of raising up and grooming Mandami from New York or other Democratic, That's quite concerning for us here.
Indeed it is. lighttothenationsministry.com and tilministry.com. Guys, fascinating conversation. I dare say we are probably the only broadcast tonight to cover these topics to this depth with this biblical eschatological insight that I think is starting to bring things more into focus. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
We're having
Brandon,
fun.
for doing that.
As Rush Limbaugh said, we're having more fun than a human being should be allowed. That's a great thing about bringing the Bible to the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gets me excited because I realize a lot of the things the world and even so-called Christians have mocked, we just keep sticking with what the Bible says. Start with the Bible first, not the newspaper, and then say, does this look like it's lining up anything? Kind of interesting. Indeed it is, and I'm having a good time doing it. And it shows that God is in control. He can do as he wills. He doesn't endorse or agree with evil. He's not the source of evil, but he can step back and let man do what he will, and it will not interrupt his plan. And in fact, he can use it to accomplish his purpose. You know, the difference between the moral will of God and the providential will of God. What God morally wants and then what God providentially allows. And that's why the Bible says what is meant for evil, God can use for good. And we know that in the end, Romans tells us that all of this will work out for good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And so for our listening friends, if you know the Lord tonight, it's all going to work out. We know who wins. It's just fun to watch it all come into being and to bring some biblical commentary to this topic, whereas much of the world thinks this is all crazy. It makes no sense. I don't understand why he's doing these things. And we come back to the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, the book of Ezekiel, and we start saying, I think we might, not going to be dogmatic, but I think we might understand why some of these things are happening and what it might be setting up. And that's what separates us Bereans from the world who has no compass, and we have a firm foundation. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation tonight.
Thank you. It was enjoyable. Bless you guys.
Amen.
Amen.
We'll be right back, guys.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.